Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first podcast of the Coffy Salon. And in this podcast, we're going to be talking about women's obsession with love, romance, and relationships. So, I decided to do this topic because I noticed that on YouTube and podcasts and just media as a whole, women invest an inordinate and frankly ridiculous amount of time talking about love, romance, sex, and relationships. And honestly, this wouldn't be a problem if, when I looked over at content that was targeted towards men, I saw an equal investment into relationships and love. However, it seemed as though in male-dominated spaces, men were allowed to have a variety of interests, and those interests were often things that were far more, how would I say, useful to society. However, it seems as though the space of beauty, fashion, lifestyle, and love have been relegated as women's responsibilities. And I wanted to explore this issue in the context of today's society and share my opinion on this entire thing. So the question is, why are women obsessed with love? Why do we spend so much time talking about relationships and partnerships? Well, there's the obvious one of there's a profit motive. Lots of big companies, whether it's in the wedding industry or the media industry, have an incentive to sell women on this idea that love and partnerships are their greatest goals in life. And in order to get these goals, you have to spend money on these assets. You have to, in the case of countries like India and Nigeria, where women bleach their skin to have access to richer men. So if you want love and you want this safety, this ultimate goal of yours, you have to spend money and buy our product. In the case of countries, Western countries like the States and even Ireland and the UK, you have to say yes to the dress. Like you have to buy this expensive multi-thousand-dollar dress because this is the day that you have been planning and dreaming for all your life. And once you do this, you would have fulfilled your responsibility of being a woman. So there's the profit motive of the advertising industry has said, how can we make profit off this demographic of people by dangling this carrot of like happily ever after in front of us and saying, you know what, you need to run and get this goal. But also there's the historical context of, back in caveman time, men were often hunters and women were often gatherers. And what that meant is that for a woman who is a gatherer, being partnered with the right mate was a life or death situation. Because when you were bleeding from your menses and you needed iron, you needed a man who could go and hunt and actually get, I guess, good meat for you because you were losing iron through your blood. And gradually that's morphed into new ways like men take you out to dinner. The entire art of courtship is like a way of a man saying, I can provide for you, so I am a good enough mate. But the question is, do these assumptions still hold true today in this modern day society where everything is changing around us? So let's tackle the first assumption is that there's a profit motive. I mean, we do live in a society of rampant consumerism, and society's goal is to sell you on ideas. And the idea is that once you are married and once you are partnered, you'll be happy. Like that is your problem, and we're solving it by giving you these tools that give you love and will ultimately give you happiness. But for anybody who's been partnered knows that like partnership is a lot of work. There's studies that show how in the States, like a majority of divorces are initiated by women. But it's also the fact that I think movies provide, especially romantic movies, provide this outlet for women to, I guess, express some of our frustrations with dissatisfactions in other aspects of our lives. When I look at movies that do very well and have succeeded at appealing to a female audience, like the Notebook, I feel as though those movies capitalize on a couple of false ideas that we have about womanhood. They often capitalize on the fact that a woman, your greatest contribution to society is how your body can be used for the betterment of those around you. So in a patriarchal society, the best a woman should do in such a society is make sure that her body, her thoughts, her actions are always in service of those around her and never herself. So when I see stuff like The Notebook, I won't say specifically The Notebook because The Notebook ends showing up a man's dedication to his wife with dementia. But I think they tap into this need for women to be seen and to be heard in a society that chooses not to hear them. Like I watched this documentary called I forget what it's called, but it's about Generation Wealth. Yes, that's the name of the documentary. And I think the director of the show talked about how beauty is often the first form of power that women have access to. And she aptly described this phenomena where we raise girls to see their beauty, their looks as the one thing that they are most useful for. This is the one thing we compliment them for so much. And then they grow up to be women who hold on to who want to hold on to beauty by any means necessary. And when someone loves us, they actually see us as beautiful. Like they truly see us in a way that other people do not see us. And so when we look at all these movies, I think they tap into women's need to be seen and to be appreciated in a society that does not value their intellectual contributions, that does not value their opinions. However, in this modern day society, women get to contribute if they want to. And a lot of women, I won't say all, because women in third world countries do not have nearly as much opportunity. But I would say that in today's society, there are ways for women to contribute without permission anymore. There are times where women in the Western world could not have open bank accounts with husband's permission and a lot of other horrible things. But now it's actually harder and harder for society to silence women's voices. Women have the internet that gives a lot of women have the internet that gives and when I say women, I want people to know that I default to women in the Western world. But women have the access to the internet. And on the internet, everybody's voice is used and can be used. And if you find your community, you can heighten your voice. I do think in a future episode, I will talk about leverage and why women don't use their voices and why women do not apply their leverage. But I think this idea of the best and the greatest you can aspire to is being partnered. And once you've partnered, you have love and affection. It doesn't hold up in today's day and age because women can achieve far more outside the bounds of marriage. And we now know that like a lot of women are initiating divorces, so it doesn't seem to end in happily ever after. And the second idea behind this is the historical context, that you need a good provider and protector because you're a woman and you're just so vulnerable, especially when when it's that time of the month. But now we have more information that tells us that women suffer rape and violence from like intimate partnership more than anything. Like the man who is going to be violent against you is not a man in the bushes, but your intimate partners. So this so-called protector and provider it's not adding up in today's day and age. Also with automation, a lot of jobs that have been done by men will no longer exist. Because automation, in the grand scheme of automation, there's some jobs that are first line jobs to be taken out, and there's some jobs that people would still prefer to be done by humans. A lot of jobs that men do, we know are more high risk. And therefore, there's an incentive, and more labor intensive, So therefore, there's an incentive to actually automate those jobs so that more people are alive. And since they're labor intensive, so that more people do not break their bones or like get in situations where they have to strenuously exert themselves at work. But jobs done by women are far more people focused, like veterinarians, nurses, teachers. Those are the jobs that will be harder for automation to come to. So if women are obsessed with love because we want to get a protector and provider, we will have to be in a situation, we'll end up in a situation where we have a society where a lot of men are frankly unemployable. We even have in the Western world how they talked about in America, more women are beginning to graduate with more degrees, higher degrees, so masters and PhDs, and we're beginning to outperform men. So we're going to get into a society where there are far more men who are frankly unemployable because automation has taken those jobs away, and far more women who have jobs that are harder for automation to get to, but also are far more qualified. And that leaves women with three choices. Women either begin to partner share, like maybe there is the one tech exec that makes lots of money, and maybe he's able to have two wives. This is not something that sounds crazy to some women in the Western world, but there's still parts of the world where men have multiple wives. Or women begin to seek out more egalitarian relationships or relationships where they are the primary breadwinner, which I think is happening more and more in the Western world. We're actually beginning to see a trend of where more and more women are beginning to step up as breadwinners. Or you're like me and have decided that the dynamics of relationships are not worth the investment, and you just decided that being single and having peace of mind is more important than being in a relationship. So I think I asked these questions when I had become kind of cynical about love. I knew that we lived in a society that lied to women about lots of things. Like this society just full of so many fucking lies. Like we're lying about everything, whether it's food culture, whether it's media culture, whether it's sex work, being work, all these lies that we're just telling ourselves. Like, so I knew like patriarchy, something had to be lying about this love idea. And then when I looked around me and I realized that even the best relationships, the good ones, unquote unquote, those relationships still came with so much concession and compromise and trying to communicate with men who, frankly, honestly, they know how to communicate. They just don't give a fuck about your fucking feelings. And I realized maybe this is not what it's all cracked up to be. And in a future podcast, I'll talk about how I decided to remain single for the rest of my life, basically. I'm a woman in my 20s and I'm like, my early 20s, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So what was I talking about? I forgot my train of thought. But I think I became so cynical towards the idea of love. I questioned, is this truly going to make me happy? Even though I could say that I did not have the best experiences with men, like the most positive. I won't say I didn't have bad ones. I just never found this radical love of my life. Just give you some context, I'm still in my early 20s. But like when I saw the women around me who did find these lifelong partners and I saw that they weren't living that great, I was like, this has to be a scam. I know a scam when I fucking see one. And if this were a movie, if my life were a movie and this were a plot, now that I have given up on love and I have decided to just focus on other more meaningful things in my life, I'll be in a cafe and I'll bump into one man and he'll be the love of my life and radically change my opinion towards love. It's always like the same idea that like women, once you love yourself, a man will love you. Like the love of a man is still the ultimate goal. But what if you just love yourself and live your life? What if you have the love of your kids, your family, your friends, your community, your church, your hockey club, that like you realize that I have invested heavily in other parts of love, that I do not need to be deeply invested in romantic partnerships. And when I realized that might be a better strategy, because I realized that just from random studies, I saw that like something about if you're an elderly person, your likelihood of spending your last few years at home instead of in like adult care facilities radically increases if you have like 3 daughters or stepdaughters, because women are just fucking amazing. I have so many women in my life and I'm just like, women are just amazing. Like we are wonderful. We are like in a future podcast, I'll talk about how society does not deserve little girls. Like little girls are empathy monsters. They absorb so much around them. They're so kind, so generous. And I see women around me who are just amazing. but they are laced with so much dysfunction, lack of self-trust, lack of self-confidence, just playing small in life. And I realized that, like, I think I think a lot of women do use love as an excuse to not deal with the greatness they have been given with. Because if women knew how great we were and how much our greatness meant responsibility, it's a lot. So maybe sometimes focusing on a loser, a pathetic man's life is a good cop out. But women are so amazing. And I realized maybe I would much rather have fellowship and communion with lots of other women than to try and find this man, unquote unquote, that radically changed my life, or he'll probably just fucking annoy me. But I think more than anything, I had to give up this idea that this idea of finding this almighty love. And it's really hard because you go through a mourning process. Because love has a lot of good feelings. You know, you release all those endorphins and all that dopamine. Like, we are hardwired to seek out this thing. But love is good. However, peace is great. There is a wonderful feeling of coming back to my apartment and having peace, of not having to know that my emotional well-being is so tightly hinged and attached to a man's emotional well-being, and a man that often cannot verbally express his emotional state, and so I end up being affected. There is peace in knowing that one person's decisions cannot radically alter my life. There is this pride in knowing that I'm truly the captain of my ship, and I have learned to bear that responsibility. And now I can even help other people in their own ships, in helping guide them through the hardship of life, you know? But you have to mourn your Cinderella story. Like, you have to give up. Like, it was a mourning process for me to realize that, like, I won't say it probably will not happen, because I don't think probably is the right word, but that it's not normal. That we were kind of sold lies, which I'm not surprised. As I said earlier, we live in a society of lies. But that even the best relationships require a lot of work. So this idea that you find some magical pill that will solve your life in the form of a man was just a lie. But sometimes we need to mourn our lies because we hold them so dearly to us. But as we mourn our lives and we begin to make space, we have to take these ideas and kind of get rid of them to make space for new ideas. Ideas that we think are more truthful, more honest, and ideas that will allow us to have more peace in our lives. I started the Coffy Salon because I became so discontent with how women's spaces were so centered around relationships, love, and partnerships. These were ideas that barely had any impact on the world around us. I wanted women to be talking about Elon Musk going to fucking Mars. How the fuck are we going to go there too? We cannot allow the biggest decisions of our civilization, of our society, in the hands of these men. We literally cannot. They don't know what they're doing. We need more women talking about not just the big questions like cryptocurrency, like getting us to Mars, like what are we going to do in this to prevent tyranny? But we also need women doing other things apart from relationships, love, and beauty. I want to hear from women who are surfers, who are tattoo artists, who skate. I want to hear from women doing a variety of things that good girls, unquote unquote, do not do. I had to give up on what it meant to be a good girl or a good woman, because all these things are either a virtue of like profit motive or evolutionary history that doesn't serve us in today's day and age, or fucking happenstance. And I need to choose a path. And every woman does get to this point where she needs to choose a path that she wants to go down in this life. And because of how unique all our experiences are, there is no movie that is going to match your life. Your movie is such an individual, one-time only movie. There is no sequel. There is no prequel. This is the only chance you have. And what we try to do as human beings is that we try to find analogies and try to find movies that give us some kind of shortened way as to what to expect next out of life. But our lives are so unique. There is no movie about it. It is what it is. It's what we're going through every single day. And what I wanted from the Coffy Salon was a space where we could We could study women who chose to go down an individual path in life, who decided to not be good girls, who decided to not invest so heavily in romantic relationships, who had lives that were so full and robust, like Josephine Baker, like or just women who said, in this one chance I have at life, I am going to play the fuck out of it. Like nobody's going to stop me from doing what I want to do. And I hope this is my first time doing this podcast, so it will not be great. Like I am hoping to iterate through this process, and not in a couple of years, but like as we create a more robust community, that I will have a better product. But I hope that women from this podcast know that like your life is yours, and you have to give up on being a good girl or feeling like you have a path, and you have to go down what feels most authentic to you. And that's what I'm trying to do, because even doing this entire podcast is me being authentic to myself, because I love being in communion with women. I love having women around me. Women are amazing. Women are great. Like you can like the fact that I always say this thing, that if women did not spend so much time on beauty and relationships, we would have found the cure to cancer by now. And I've said this to women from all different backgrounds, all different ages, and no woman has ever argued with that. No woman has ever been like, Coffy, you're being harsh. No, every single woman has been like, yeah, you're right. You are very right. And I wanted to create a space where women's emotional, feminine, creative energy was not exhausted on irrelevant things. And I hope that when you listen to this podcast, you're inspired to just be in communion with me and other women who just want to do other things with our lives. Women who want to go into spaces that we weren't meant to be in. Women who want to ask questions that we're not meant to question. Women who want to just live full, robust, authentic lives. I also want to just be in communion with some crazy ass, freaky ass women. Like I want to be in communion with women who like only like the color green and only wear green every single day because this is what feels most authentic to them. I want to be in communion with women, authentic women living their fullest and greatest lives. And even if you're not there yet, it's a process, because I'm trying to get there too. But I realized there was no space for women who just did not fit the mold, who did not align with what patriarchy expected good women to be, to actually meet. So I said, let me create this. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, but more than anything, I have to leave everybody with one question, because I think we should always meditate on a question is I guess, who would I be if I didn't invest so much time in relationships with men, particularly? I don't know about lesbians because I can't speak to lesbians. I even think lesbians are literally the ultimate women who are partnered and romantically like engaged with other women. But where would I be? What would I have invested my time if I wasn't wasting it on a man who did not give enough fucks about me? Or even if the man was a good man and a kind man to me, where would I be if I did not exhaust so much effort and energy trying to accommodate this person, but just radically living for myself? I hope you've all enjoyed us. Follow us on Twitter. I'm creating an Instagram. This is a process. Oh my God, it's really fucking hard, but whatever. Follow us on Twitter. Leave a comment below. We're all trying to figure this out, and I just want to create a space where we can do so with the encouragement, support from other women. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.